Why do some remote islands capture our imagination, while others barely register? Start in the South Atlantic with Tristan da Cunha, a volcanic island so far from the usual routes that even getting there feels like entering a different age of travel. Tristan da Cunha is not near a major airport, not on a casual cruise path, and not surrounded by busy neighbors. It sits alone in the ocean, linked to the outside world mostly by long sea journeys from southern Africa. For most people, that single fact is enough to make the place feel unreal. There are roads in the settlement homes, a school, a church, and daily routines. But beyond the village, the island rises sharply into green slopes and volcanic ground, with the Atlantic pressing in from every side. What makes Tristan so strange is not that it is empty. It is that it is inhabited at all. A few hundred people live on one of the most isolated settled islands on Earth, in a community where weather supply ships, fishing, farming, and family ties matter in ways most mainland places have forgotten. Isolation is not a dramatic backdrop here. It is part of the calendar. The island's story began with discovery by sailors, then permanent settlement in the early 19th century. Over time, families stayed adapted and built a life at the edge of the world. There have been storms, shipwrecks, evacuations, and the constant challenge of keeping a small community connected without losing what makes it distinct. In the 1960s, a volcanic eruption forced residents to leave temporarily, but many returned. That return is a big part of why Tristan fascinates people. It was not just a remote island people escaped from. It was a remote island they chose again. And that is the secret behind its pull. Tristan da Cunha answers a question many people quietly ask: could a human community survive and still feel like home in a place this far away? It matters, because places like this remind us that geography is not only about borders and capitals. Sometimes it is about endurance, belonging, and the stubborn idea that even the loneliest land can become the center of someone's world. And once you understand that, the next island feels even stranger, because its story is not about a community holding steady. It is about a tiny population living under the weight of a legend. Some islands are quiet because they are empty. Pitcairn is quiet for a stranger reason. People know its name, but almost no one will ever stand on its shore. Pitcairn Island lies far out in the South Pacific, away from the normal rhythm of international travel. It has no big resort strip, no airport receiving regular passengers, and no easy arrival. To reach it, visitors usually have to connect through other remote islands, wait for a vessel, and accept that the ocean sets the schedule. That alone gives Pitcairn a different kind of geography. It is not simply distant. It resists convenience. The island is small, rugged, and surrounded by steep coastline. The settlement is not a city hiding in miniature. It is a tiny community with fewer than 100 residents, where everyday life depends on supply links, local work, weather windows, and the ability to solve problems without calling in instant help from the mainland. In a connected age, Pitcairn still feels like a place where distance has power. Its unusual fame comes from one of the most well-known sea stories in British and Pacific history, the Mutiny on the Bounty. In the late 18th century, mutineers and Polynesian companions eventually settled on Pitcairn, seeking a place beyond easy reach. That origin story has followed the island, ever since turning it into a real location wrapped in legend. But the modern island is not a museum exhibit. It is a living community with its own rhythms, responsibilities, and complicated past. What makes Pitcairn especially fascinating is the contrast. The name carries drama, but the place itself is slow, remote, and practical. People grow food, maintain homes, manage communications, and deal with the limits of being far from almost everything. The island's geography shapes every choice. A broken part, a medical need, a delayed ship, or a rough sea can matter in a way that mainland life rarely teaches. Pitcairn matters because it shows how a tiny island can hold an outsized place in the imagination. Its coastline is not crowded, but its story is heavy. It is remote enough to feel hidden, yet famous enough that people keep wondering what life there is really like. And after Pitcairn, the pattern becomes clearer. The most compelling remote islands are not always the biggest or the most beautiful. Sometimes they are the places where distance changes the rules of ordinary life. Then there are islands where the story becomes even more extreme because almost nobody lives there at all. Kerguelen, deep in the southern Indian Ocean, is one of those places that sounds less like a destination and more like a test of what humans are willing to reach. Kerguelen is often called the Desolation Islands, a name that tells you the mood before you know the details. It belongs to France as part of its southern territories, but it is nowhere near the France most people imagine. There are no permanent towns, no holiday streets, and no ordinary airport welcoming travelers. Instead, there are research facilities, temporary personnel, rough weather, and a landscape shaped by wind, cold seas, cliffs, and open emptiness. The island group is large enough to feel like a world, yet remote enough to feel almost outside normal geography. Scientists, technicians, and support crews come and go. But Kerguelen is not a place built around permanent family life. It is built around observation. Weather, wildlife, oceans, and the southern environment make it important, even if most people will never hear its name in daily conversation. Its history follows the pattern of many remote islands sighted by explorers, claimed by states, used for scientific and strategic purposes, and left mostly outside the roots of ordinary life. Kerguelen did not become a crowded colony or a tropical escape. Its climate and position made that unlikely. Instead, it became valuable precisely because it is so far from everything. In a world full of measurement satellites, shipping climate research, and environmental monitoring, remote places are not useless. They are listening posts. That is why remote islands keep drawing curiosity. They compress big questions into small pieces of land. Who lives there? Who maintains them? What happens when storms arrive? Why keep a station in a place with no normal town? And what does isolation do to the people who pass through? Kerguelen shows the final version of the remote island mystery. Tristan da Cunha is isolation with a hometown. Pitcairn is isolation wrapped in legend. Kerguelen is isolation turned into infrastructure, science, and endurance. Together they reveal why these places stay fascinating. Remote islands are not blank spaces at the edge of the ocean. They are proof that the world still has corners where distance is not an inconvenience, it is the main character.